police officers. When a kid calls 911 as a prank, what do you do? Last Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in my patrol car finishing paperwork when dispatch crackled to life. All units, we have a 911 hang-up from 4127 Maple Street. Caller sounded like a child. Said mom's not breathing, then disconnected. My partner Jake looked at me and rolled his eyes. Another prank call. These kids don't understand how serious this is, but something about the dispatcher's tone made my stomach drop. The voice had been shaky, scared. We hit the lights and sirens anyway. Better safe than sorry. The whole drive there, I kept thinking about all the fake calls we'd gotten lately. Kids thinking it's funny to tie up emergency services. Last month, some teenager called saying there was a fire at the school. Turned out he just wanted to get out of a math test. When we pulled up to 4127 Maple Street, everything looked normal. Nice little house with a white picket fence. No ambulance needed here, I thought. No chaos, no emergency vehicles, no neighbors gathered around looking worried. Just a quiet Sunday afternoon. I knocked on the door, ready to give some kid the lecture of their life about wasting police resources. The door opened and there was this little boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, blonde hair, wearing a Pokemon t-shirt that was way too big for him. But his eyes looked terrified. "Hey, buddy," I said, crouching down to his level. "Did you call 911 today?" He nodded slowly, his bottom lip starting to quiver. I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to touch the phone." Jake was already pulling out his notebook, probably ready to write up another prank call report, but I held up my hand. Something wasn't right here. The kid wasn't acting like the usual pranksters we dealt with. He wasn't giggling or trying to run away. He looked genuinely scared. "Where's your mom, buddy?" I asked gently. His eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. "She's sleeping on the couch, but she won't wake up, and she's making weird noises." That's when my training kicked. "Can we come inside and check on her?" He stepped aside, wringing his little hands. As soon as I walked into the living room, I saw her. A woman in her 30s, unconscious on the couch, breathing shallow and raspy. On the coffee table next to her were 3 empty pill bottles, oxycodone, Ambient, and something else I couldn't read from that distance. "Call for an ambulance," I told Jake immediately. Then I turned back to the boy. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Tommy," he whispered, tears starting to roll down his cheeks. "Is mommy going to be okay?" I tried to wake her up, but she just made scary sounds. "I remembered you're supposed to call 911 when someone's hurt. But then I got scared because mommy always says don't talk to strangers on the phone." My heart broke right there. This kid had done exactly what he was supposed to do, but he thought he was in trouble for it. I knelt down next to him while Jake checked on his mom. "Tommy, you did the right thing calling us. You might have saved your mom's life." The paramedics arrived within 5 minutes. They immediately started working on Tommy's mom, checking her pulse, setting up an IV, asking Jake about the pill bottles. I stayed with Tommy, who had grabbed onto my leg and wouldn't let go. "I thought you were going to arrest me," he sobbed into my uniform. "I thought I was bad for using the phone." "No, buddy. You're a hero," I told him, rubbing his back. "You saw your mom needed help and you called the right people? That takes courage." The paramedics got Tommy's mom stabilized and loaded her into the ambulance. Turns out she'd taken way too many pills, probably by accident, while she was already drowsy. If Tommy hadn't called when he did, if we hadn't responded, if I had just dismissed it as another prank, she wouldn't have made it. While we waited for Tommy's grandmother to arrive, he sat in my patrol car and I let him play with the siren. He kept asking if his mom was going to be okay, and I promised him the doctors were going to take really good care of her. 2 weeks later, Tommy's mom brought him by the station. She was doing better, going to counseling, being more careful with her medications. Tommy ran up to me with a drawing he'd made. It was a stick figure police officer with a big smile standing next to a little boy and a house. "This is you saving my mom," he said proudly. That drawing is still taped to my locker. Last Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in my patrol car finishing paperwork when dispatch crackled to life. "All units, we have a 911 hang-up from 4127 Maple Street." Caller sounded like a child. Said mom's not breathing, then disconnected. My partner Jake rolled his eyes. "Another prank call," he muttered. Kids these days don't get how serious this is. But something about the dispatcher's voice, a shaky, scared tone, made my stomach drop. We hit the lights and sirens anyway. Better safe than sorry. During the drive, I thought about all the fake calls we'd gotten lately. Just last month, a teenager called about a school fire just to get out of a math test. When we pulled up to 4127 Maple Street, everything looked normal. A nice little house with a white picket fence. No ambulance. No neighbors standing around worried. Just a quiet Sunday afternoon. I knocked on the door, ready to scold some kid for wasting police time. The door swung open, revealing a little boy about 8 or 9, blonde hair, wearing a Pokemon shirt way too big for him. But his eyes, those terrified eyes, grabbed me. "Hey, buddy," I said, crouching down to his level. "Did you call 911? He nodded slowly, his bottom lip trembling. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have touched the phone." Jake was pulling out his notebook, ready for another prank call report, but I raised my hand. Something wasn't right. The kid wasn't laughing or trying to run. He was scared. "Where's your mom, buddy?" I asked gently. His eyes darted to the hallway, then back. "She's sleeping on the couch, but she won't wake up. She's making weird noises." My training kicked in. "Can we come inside and check?" He nodded, fidgeting with his hands. In the living room, I found her, a woman in her 30s, unconscious, breathing shallow and raspy. On the coffee table were empty pill bottles, oxycodone, Ambien, and another I couldn't read. "Call for an ambulance," I told Jake immediately. Then I knelt next to the boy. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Tommy," he whispered, tears streaming. "Is Mommy going to be okay?" I tried waking her, but she only made scary groans. Tommy said, "I remembered you're supposed to call 911 when someone's hurt. But I was scared because Mommy says don't talk to strangers on the phone." My heart broke. This kid did exactly what he was supposed to, yet he thought he'd done something wrong. I rubbed his back. "Tommy, you did the right thing. You might have saved your mom's life." Paramedics arrived within 5 minutes. They worked quickly to stabilize her, setting up IVs and asking about the pills. Tommy clung to my leg, sobbing softly. "I thought you were going to arrest me for using the phone." "No, buddy," I assured him. "You're a hero." The paramedics loaded his mom into the ambulance. She'd taken too many pills, probably accidentally while already drowsy. If Tommy hadn't called, if we'd ignored it as a prank like usual, she wouldn't have survived. While we waited for Tommy's grandmother, he played with the siren in my patrol car. He kept asking if his mom would be okay. I promised the doctors would take great care of her. 2 weeks later, Tommy's mom brought him to the station. She was recovering, seeing a counselor, and managing her meds carefully. Tommy ran up to me carrying a drawing, a stick-figure police officer with a giant smile, standing next to a little boy in a house. "This is you saving my mom," he said proudly. "That drawing still hangs taped to my locker." Story. My wife slapped me in the face when I refused to give my parents' house to her sister who had just graduated from college. She yelled, "I want you out of this house now." "You bastard." I calmly replied, "Okay." The next week, when she tried to move in, they were shocked to receive, instead of the keys, a letter that said, Chapter 1, The Slap. The dinner table was still set with untouched plates when it happened. Her sister had just graduated, and my wife was glowing with pride. But then, out of nowhere, she turned to me and said, "Give her your parents' house. She deserves a good start in life." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What?" She leaned forward, her voice sharp and cutting. "She's young, ambitious, and she deserves it more than your useless parents. They don't need it. Sign it over." I laughed bitterly. That house has been in my family for 3 generations. My parents live there. You think I'd just throw them out so your sister can play queen in someone else's home? The next moment, her palm cracked across my face. The sound echoed through the dining room, sharper than the cutlery on china. "You bastard!" she screamed, eyes blazing. "If you won't do it, then I want you out. Out of this house now." My cheek burned, but I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there calm as ever and said one word. "Okay." She thought I'd caved. She thought the slap had broken me. But little did she know that okay wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of something she could never have imagined. Chapter 2. The Quiet Setup. The next morning, I packed a small bag and left the house. She didn't even look at me, assuming her slap and ultimatum had worked. Her sister sat smugly at the table, sipping coffee like she already owned the property. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this for years. My father had always said, "Protect what's yours with paperwork, not fists." And I listened. The house, it wasn't in my name. My parents had placed it in a family trust with me as the trustee. The trust deed was airtight. No sale, no transfer, no mortgage, unless every single blood heir approved. That meant me, my parents, and even my distant uncle had to sign. My wife had 0 rights over it. That week, I visited my lawyer. We drafted a letter not just about the trust, but also about the prenuptial agreement she seemed to have conveniently forgotten. The prenup stated clearly, no claims to family assets, no spousal support if infidelity or abuse occurred, and the bonus clause, attempts to seize property, would trigger automatic forfeit of her marital share. By the time the letter was ready, I'd also opened a separate bank account and moved my salary into it. Quiet, invisible moves. A week later, when she and her family marched up to the house with boxes, ready to move her sister in, my father handed them the envelope instead of the keys. Inside, they found the trust documents, the prenup clauses, and one more surprise I'd added. Chapter 3. The letter unfolds. They stood on the porch, smug smiles plastered across their faces. My wife's sister even had the audacity to say, "Don't scratch the hardwood floors when you move out. I'll be bringing in new furniture." My father calmly handed the sealed envelope across. "Open it," he said, his voice steady but sharp. My wife tore into it like a victory prize and then froze. The first page was the trust deed, clearly stamped and notarized. Her face drained as she read the clause. Property at 241 Oakwood Lane is owned in perpetuity by the Carter Family Trust. Trustee Daniel Carter, me. Rights of use, transfer, or sale require unanimous approval of blood heirs only. Her mother snatched it next, flipping pages as if her sheer willpower could change the ink. Then came the prenup summary, highlighted, bolded, underlined. No rights to family property. No alimony if she initiated hostility or attempted asset seizure. Forfeit of marital claim upon violation. Her sister's smug grin faltered. This can't be legal." That's when my father leaned forward. "Oh, it's not only legal, it's ironclad. And now, thanks to your little stunt demanding property, slapping him in his own home, you've triggered the forfeit clause." The final page of the letter was mine. A short handwritten note. "You wanted me out of this house. Done. But remember, this house was never yours to begin with, and now neither am I." Silence. Not the smug kind from before. This was different. Their faces palled as the weight of it hit them. They'd lost not only the house, but also the leverage they thought they had over me. And I hadn't even started with the next move. Chapter 4. The fallout begins. Word spread faster than wildfire. My father, who had stayed silent for much of the ordeal, made a few calls, discreet but deliberate. Within hours, extended family, neighbors, and even colleagues had heard whispers of the scene at the house. By the next morning, the narrative was clear. My wife had tried to seize property that wasn't hers. She slapped me and threw me out, only to discover the trust protected everything, and because of the prenup, she'd gained nothing and lost everything. At her job, things soured quickly. One of her managers pulled me aside a few days later, saying, "When you treat family that way, it gets around. People talk." Her arrogance had been tolerated before, but now it painted her as reckless, entitled, and untrustworthy. Her sister, meanwhile, had made plans to move into her new house. She'd bragged to her friends and even put down deposits for renovations. When the truth reached them, those friends mocked her relentlessly. Contractors pulled out. Her reputation took a nosedive before she even graduated into her first real job. And my wife's mother, the woman who smirked when I was humiliated, she became the subject of whispers in her social circles. How could she raise daughters like that? Invitations dried up. Old friends avoided her calls. Meanwhile, I carried myself calmly, politely, never raising my voice. At family dinners I still attended, I offered nothing but a polite smile and silence. And that silence was louder than any shout could have been. But the best part hadn't happened yet. Because while they were scrambling to save face, I was quietly preparing something much bigger. Chapter 5. The Hammer Falls. For weeks, my wife, her sister, and her mother tried to recover from the humiliation. They spun stories to anyone who would listen. It was just a misunderstanding. He tricked us. We didn't know about the trust. But gossip has no mercy. And I hadn't even played my final card. You see, my father hadn't just secured the trust to protect the house. He had also made me the sole trustee of several rental properties, ones my wife's family had quietly assumed they would inherit through her marriage to me. They had even been collecting rent behind my back, pocketing the money without reporting it. I had the records, every shady transfer, every missed tax payment. With my lawyer's help, I filed a single motion that froze their accounts pending investigation. Overnight, the money they'd stolen was locked up, legally mine as trustee. The fallout was brutal. Her sister had to drop out of her graduate program because she couldn't pay tuition. Her mother was forced to sell off her jewelry and car just to keep up appearances. My ex-wife, she lost not just me, but every ounce of credibility. No respectable family wanted their son associated with her after the trust and financial fraud came to light. And me? I rebuilt quietly, moved into a modest but beautiful new home, continued working steadily, and focused on myself and my parents. The sweetest part came one Sunday morning when her sister showed up at the door with tears in her eyes, begging, "Can we at least move into the guest house? We have nowhere else to go." I smiled politely and handed her a piece of paper. It wasn't house keys. It was a copy of the trust deed, the very document that made everything impossible for them. I spoke calmly. "No, actions have consequences. This house is my family's legacy, and you made sure you're not part of that family anymore." Her face crumbled. She left without another word. Epilogue. Full circle. The day my wife slapped me, she thought it was the moment she broke me. "Get out of this house, you bastard," she had screamed, her sister smirking behind her. But looking back now, it was the day I stopped being silent. Months later, when the dust settled, I stood alone on the porch of my parents' house, the deeds safely in my name, the trust untouchable, and their schemes in ruins. The same porch where she once demanded I handed over. Behind me, the walls carried my father's laughter, my mother's stories, the warmth of the life they'd built, untainted, preserved. My ex-wife, she lived in a shabby apartment on the far side of town, her so-called support system shattered. Her sister worked night shifts at a diner. Her mother swallowed her pride daily. And the three of them avoided social gatherings because they couldn't bear the whispers. And me, I wasn't rich, but I had peace. I wasn't flashy, but I had respect. I wasn't perfect, but I had my dignity. One afternoon, as I locked the front door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, I saw a man who hadn't just survived betrayal. He'd turned it into a weapon. The slap they gave me wasn't humiliation anymore. It was the sound of their empire cracking. And every time I heard the echo of it in my memory, I smiled because it reminded me of the moment their downfall began. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you think about this story in the comments below. Like the story,